So when you're removing batteries on these trucks that have dual batteries, make sure you put something on this positive side while you're kind of messing around, because it will ground out. I don't think there's much of a charge in this battery, but you don't want it to touch ground. There's so many wires on this thing. I think when we put this back together, we're going to clean this up a little bit easier, or to make it easier when they do go to replace these batteries, because having this like this, it'd be nice if all the wires were tucked on one side or another so you could pull these batteries in and out without having to completely disassemble all of your wiring. I think we're going to go onto the other side because it looks a little easier, and we'll get that one pulled first. Then we'll come back to this side, just because this looks like it's going to be a little bit more time consuming. This side has the winch attached to it. It looks like they put this fusible link in line. Let's see if we can get a shot of that. I don't know if you can see all that corrosion on them, but that's definitely going to have to be cleaned up. This is just crumbling off there. So you can see all that corrosion just falling off that. And you can see that too. So we'll have to, once we get the motor out, I'm big on getting engine bays cleaned up, so use lots of dielectric grease. A lot of this does not happen on all your connections. It tends to keep the air from getting in there. You can see there's lots of corrosion. We will neutralize all that. Okay, now we'll move on to the bumper. Start by pulling these crusty, I'm gonna have to do something with that. So it looks like to me the intercooler has to come out before those bumper bracket bolts will come out, or you have to take out multiple bolts. So all it's got to come out anyways. Hopefully I just remember that that needs to come out first. Sometimes taking boots off, you need one of these hook. I think that this is called a cotter pin removal tool. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just going to get the front of this taken all apart. You don't have to watch me do that. When we come back, that'll all be off. Alright, so we got the majority of the front apart. I was just going to show a quick tip on getting these fans off, because they're kind of a pain. I've never owned a clutch fan tool. All I have is this 36mm wrench here. And then I put this pry bar down in between. I did have to remove one of these nuts. It's hard to see here. One of these nuts on the pulley to get my wrench down in there. I may end up having to take another one off to get the wrench out. That's just the easy way to do it. Put a pry bar, put it there. You just tap this with a hammer and they come off fairly easy. I've only had a couple of them beat me, so. All right, now that the fan's out of the way, we are going to be reusing the water pump. Gentleman said that it's pretty much basically brand new, and the people he was buying the motor from said that would be fine. All we're going to do is, most of this stuff's just going to hang out of the way. We're going to take the intake off, disconnect the exhaust, pull the turbo, unbolt the bell housing bolts, torque converter bolts, and then air conditioning. I'm hoping The air conditioning can just kind of hang off to the side, or if we got to, we'll move some stuff out of the way, but we don't want to have to recharge this whole system if we don't have to. Pretty much everything should just be able to move out of the way. Hopefully we can get this motor pulled in no time. Alright, real quick. I don't know if anybody else has these thoughts like I do when they're working on these cars, but taking these wires loose, they are fastened everywhere. Fastened here, 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 here. With on this bracket, and they're fastened down here, and then I keep looking at even more, and I think I'm not very smart, but I think I could have figured out a better route for some of this stuff to make it a little easier. But that's just me ranting, I guess. So I'm just going to keep working at it, see how far I get tonight. I'm not really working super hard. I'd like to get it out tomorrow and get the parts swapped so we can get the core inspected and the paperwork filled out and then sent on its way. These motors have a $3,000 core, so see how much of this we can get swapped out by tomorrow. I'm just going to continue pulling, and I'll update you as I go. Alright, so several hours later, I finally pulled the turbo, the exhaust manifold. I'll get the motor mount unbolted. This side here, all I have is the starter, one bolt in the starter left, the motor mount, and then I'm going to crawl under and get all the transmission and torque converter bolts out, and I'll get back at it and give you an update. Alright, I'm about ready to pull the engine. Just figure I'd give a little update here. Passenger side down below the turbo, and you'll see that little hole down in there is where your torque converter bolts are. They are hidden behind a plate like that. So if you're looking pull a tranny, I think you can still get to it without too much of a problem, without having to pull all this. But pulling the motor, that's where they're hidden at. There is 6 of those bolts on the torque converter, so I'm pretty much ready to pull this motor out right now. I'm just gonna I usually just use a ratchet strap. I go over the top of the frame on each side, put a ratchet strap underneath the transmission just to hold it up, and then I can, lift it up and down as needed. I'm gonna go ahead and get the motor mounts loosened and then get set up, and then we'll get this motor pulled. Another broken socket. Craftsman. Well, now that the motor's out, I'm gonna get the truck pulled outside, and I'll probably just degrease and power wash the engine bay, make sure all that's good and cleaned up, get all the bolts, all the tools cleaned up, just make sure it's nice and clean so when I start I have a fresh engine bay. And then I'll pull that other engine over here and start swapping things over. We've got the motor set down. It's still attached to the engine hoist for now. Got the engine bay cleaned up in the truck. I still haven't been able to find where all the oil was dumping out of this engine on this side. This is the driver's side. This has got a plastic, must be for sound. We got to do an actual real inspection on this. The paperwork requires us to do, let's see, drain all fluids, asks if there's a hole in the block, spun main bearing, broken crankshaft or connecting rod, drop seat, broken valve, cracked cylinder head, if the oil pan is reusable, cylinder damage beyond repair, camshaft journal and block. So there's a bunch of stuff I'm going to have to check out and fill out the information the best I can. I don't think I'm going to pull the engine apart that much, but as far as I know, it does still run. It just has a heavy knock, so, and it blows oil out. So I'm just going to get to pulling all these parts off, and then I'll probably bring the camera back out after I remove it all and do an inspection. Alright, so I'm in the process of swapping all these parts on this engine. I'm not going to record the whole process, just parts that I see that are important. So when I got to the oil cooler, it all looks really good in the old one. It's the old oil cooler. There is some gunk, it's really hard to see. You can see there's lots of sludge built up in there. You really want to just take your time, really get this part really nice and cleaned up. If you don't, that sludge really could go through a brand new engine. It may not do a ton of damage, but it's always good to just pay attention. These lower, this is the lower area down in here, and that's pretty thick sludge that's in there. So I'm going to take some time. We're going to get this cleaned up, make it look new again, and then I'll just keep installing. If I see anything else on these as I'm swapping, I'll turn the camera back on. Just to show you the intake, pretty sooty. Well, a lot of that brighter colored stuff I knocked in there, but so yeah, we just have 2 more injectors to get out, and then we'll start putting this in here, finishing it up. All this stuff here, you really want to pay attention getting things clean. This is your preheater for your intake. You want to make sure that's clean. Just get everything nice and clean. Gentleman did not want to get his injectors tested, so I guess if they fail, they're fairly simple to get to because they're right on top. Yeah, not too bad. It's not going too bad. I have to spend several days doing this. Like I said in another video, I do work full time, so this is just something I just enjoy doing here and there. So I'll update you here in a bit. Alright, I finally got enough tore apart on this engine, and there is the failure. That is a auxiliary dipstick hole from the factory. The one in the very back, here's what you put your dipstick in. Then they come plugged like this, and that one looks like it's about ready to fail too. And then there's this one that's got a hole. So that's the failure of this. I heard it's very common on these motors to have some sort of an oil leak on the driver's side. That's usually not the most common spot. The most common spot is this mechanical fuel pump block off, and they have this bracket with that rubber hose. I think it goes to the PVC valve. I don't know what it goes to right off, but that rubber hose will fail and it'll blow oil out that. But that one right there being so low, that's what failed on this. I don't really think they improve much when they rebuild them. They just put plugs in them. You can see it's really difficult to see that. And then that back there is the factory dipstick hole. I'm just going to finish getting the injector pump and the wiring on, and I'm going to be pretty much ready to start installing the motor. I've already got the injectors. All the injectors are in. I got to put the fuel piping on, and I have to clearance the valve cover in the back here. I think it's for these studs in the back here. But hopefully by this weekend I'll be installing this motor. I won't be able to get much done after work, so figure I was kind of excited about seeing where the failure was. He was hoping it wasn't a crack in the block, so he'll like that idea that that's a lot better. I mean, obviously it's not a good thing that the engine failed, but anyways, I'll be back. All right, I'm back on swapping the Dodge motor. Yesterday I had to take some time and go down to my parents' house and give them a hand, so actually been a really long week for me. I know that the hot weather's coming, so I finished putting our ductless heat pump unit in to where we actually have some heat and air conditioning finally. So I'm back out on swapping parts. So when you get head studs on these motors, it does come with papers that says you must clearance this valve cover, and I'll show you why. So this stud here now hits this little piece of aluminum. So all I'm going to do is get my die grinder, and I'm just going to die grind this out around it and try not to take out too much of it. That way it still holds the strength. And then this should sit down on there just fine. All right, finished product. That is about what you want. You want to be able to have some movement there. I just used, I think they call it a peanut grinder, I don't know. Die grinder with a deburr tool. That's about all I use on those, but that'll be a good fit. There's plenty of movement for expansion, for heat, and shouldn't have any issues. Alright, motor's in. Motor mounts are on. Engine's bolted up to the transmission. I still got to do torque converters, bolts. Other than that, it's coming along really nice. Alright, so I guess part of trying to record things is actually recording them. I tend to turn the music on and I forgot. So motor's in. It's pretty much hooked up. I'm just going to put the front end together. I guess I'm just going to film when I remember. Alright, we'll do an update where I'm at. I have everything pretty much ready to go. All I got to do is throw some oil in it. I'm really just concentrating on getting some of this wiring cleaned up while I'm charging the batteries. If you remember, I think I showed in the beginning of this the corrosion. So I'm cleaning it up right now. Just baking soda and water, making sure everything's good. If you notice, where's that other bolt? I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can see on these bolts, the corrosion will just start eating right through it. If I can't get this cleaned up, I think I have another bolt the same size. But this I'm going to try and save. Usually I don't use these fuse blocks like this. I use a breaker. I don't have one in here. Just when I run a winch, I usually run a 200 or 300 amp breaker on all my stuff. They're a little easier. That way if you overload it, just trips the breaker. But just to remember, if you guys see all that white buildup in your batteries, it's best to just take care of it when you see it. I'm going to spend some time, like I say, while I'm waiting for batteries to charge and that corrosion to go away. I'm going to try and clean up all this, make it run a little different. I might redo some of these ends. And then really all I got to do is put the bumper and the winch mount back on it, and hopefully before I put all that on, I'm going to start cranking it over and getting some oil pressure built up. When I get to that point, I'll be back. So it's been several hours now. I got everything together, cleaned up that wiring, got the bumper on. Now we're just having a hard time keeping the batteries up enough. I did see oil pressure, so I'm actually hoping to have this thing fire up. There it goes. Hot damn. Sounds good. Wow. Always looking to leave. We're looking for any kind of leak. Gotta give my creek. Looks good. I still have to hook up the cold side intercooler pipe. I have to leave it off just in case I'm running out of diesel. Amazing. I didn't think it would fire up as quick on camera. So all I got left, I'm going to throw the winch bumper back on and take it for a few spins. We got to get up the temperature, and I got to retorque the head at 140. So once I get that done, I think it's ready for pickup. I'll get back to you. Alright, I'm just wrapping this up. Most of this channel is going to be Mainly just showing people that they can do pretty much anything with minimal stuff. Normal people have more tools than I do, it seems like. I've been to people's homes that have way fancier stuff than me, and they always have an excuse why they can't get it done. Alright, I'm going to get the wiring all wrapped up. I got to rerun all this cables up to the battery, and then hook up these fog lights again, and then I'm going to take it for a drive. I got to retorque the head bolts, and I'm done with this. Hope you guys like this video. The next video coming out is going to be sticking this LS1 in a, I think it's a 94 or 95 4Runner. Hopefully by then I have a little bit better hang of recording. I'll try harder. Let me know what you think.